At first, the men laughed at him. Who shows up to a brutal Pacific battlefield carrying a rifle he bought through a mail-order catalog? The other soldiers joked that he might as well be armed with a sword. They mocked the wooden stock, the cheap look, and the strange scope mounted onto it. But 4 days later, those same men were staring in disbelief. The man they'd made fun of had quietly eliminated 11 Japanese snipers, each one hidden, deadly, and ready to kill. Suddenly, that mail-order rifle didn't look funny anymore. It looked like the most dangerous weapon in the entire jungle. The story begins with an American soldier who didn't match the typical image of a frontline sniper. He wasn't loud, he wasn't impressive to look at, and he didn't brag like many others. What set him apart was something else entirely. Confidence in a weapon nobody else respected. When he first arrived on the island, the other troops were shocked that he carried a civilian hunting rifle instead of standard army gear, but he calmly told them that he trusted this rifle more than anything the army issued. It was lighter, faster, and he had trained with it for years. To him, it felt like an extension of his own hands. The Pacific jungles were filled with Japanese snipers who hid high in trees, inside caves, behind fallen logs, and sometimes even underwater with bamboo breathing tubes. They could hold their position for days without moving, waiting for the perfect shot. Many American soldiers were hit before they ever saw where the bullet came from. Entire platoons feared these silent hunters. But this quiet soldier with the cheap rifle wasn't afraid. He believed that his skill and familiarity with his own weapon gave him an edge no one else had. On the first day, while his unit was pinned down by a sniper high in the treetops, he stepped forward without hesitation. The others yelled at him to get back, thinking he was walking towards certain death. But he raised his mail-order rifle, exhaled slowly, and fired one clean shot. The Japanese sniper fell from the tree instantly. The men around him couldn't believe it. They hadn't even spotted the sniper, but he had located, aimed, and eliminated the threat in just seconds. Word spread quickly through the unit. By the end of the second day, he had taken down several more hidden shooters, each one using camouflage techniques the Japanese army perfected over years of jungle warfare. The other soldiers started asking him questions. How did he spot them? How was he so accurate? And why did he trust a rifle that everyone else thought was a joke? His answer was simple: because I know exactly how this rifle behaves. I've used it my whole life. When the moment comes, I don't have to think. I just aim and shoot. By the third day, he was no longer the quiet man they mocked. Now he was the one leading the hunt. The officers began relying on him to clear sniper positions before the unit moved. His deadly efficiency was saving lives, and the others finally understood that it wasn't the rifle that mattered. It was the man behind it. On the fourth day, after eliminating his 11th sniper, the same soldiers who had laughed at him came to him with respect. They asked him to teach them his methods, how he tracked movement, how he listened to the forest, how he used shadows and reflections to spot danger. The mail-order rifle had become a legend, and so had the man holding it. But what truly set him apart wasn't just accuracy, it was his calmness under pressure, his deep understanding of the weapon he carried, and his ability to outthink enemies who were considered the masters of jungle sniping. His story wasn't just about skill, it was about proving that sometimes the most underestimated soldier becomes the most dangerous man on the battlefield. The days that followed revealed just how rare his talent truly was. While most soldiers relied on standard army training, he relied on instincts sharpened long before the war even began. He had grown up hunting in thick American forests, where the sound of a twig snapping or a bird suddenly going silent meant everything. The jungle, with all its dangers, felt familiar to him in a strange way. Where others felt trapped in the humidity, darkness, and constant buzzing of insects, he felt alert, alive, and focused. He had a natural ability to read the environment, something no textbook or drill instructor could ever teach. This is what gave him an edge over the Japanese snipers who were experts at using nature to their advantage. Japanese snipers were known for their patience and discipline. They could stay hidden longer than almost any other sniper force in the world. Many were selected specifically because they could remain completely still for hours, even days, in the scorching heat of the jungle. Some blended into trees using carefully designed camouflage nets, while others burrowed into hillside holes with only a tiny slit for their rifles. They were trained to take only one shot and then vanish before the Americans could react. And yet, this quiet American soldier repeatedly found them before they found him. His unit began to rely on him more than anyone else because he had a way of sensing danger before it appeared. He could look at a patch of jungle and instantly know if something was wrong. As word spread through the battalion, officers started assigning him more dangerous missions. Sometimes he was sent alone, moving ahead of the unit to locate enemy snipers. Other times he stayed with the platoon, scanning the treetops while the others advanced. No matter the assignment, he displayed an uncanny ability to spot the slightest irregularity, whether it was a leaf out of place, a glint of light off metal, or a branch that didn't move with the wind. He understood that a sniper's biggest enemy wasn't the opposing rifle. It was impatience, and he knew that Japanese snipers often gave themselves away by shifting ever so slightly, even if it was just the tightening of a finger or the movement of a shadow. By now, the same soldiers who once mocked his mail-order rifle began following him closely, watching his every move, hoping to learn even a fraction of his skill. Some asked him how he knew when a sniper was watching them. He would say, "The jungle talks, you just have to listen." To the others, it sounded mystical or exaggerated, but he meant it literally. He listened to the change in the sound of insects, the sudden stillness of birds, the way the jungle's rhythm shifted whenever something unnatural entered it. These subtle cues were invisible to most soldiers, but to him they were loud signals screaming danger. During one patrol, the platoon came across a narrow ravine. The men hesitated, suspecting an ambush, but no one could see where the danger might be. He crouched down, studied the terrain, and after a moment pointed at a cluster of trees on the opposite ridge. At first glance, nothing looked unusual, but he instructed everyone to stay low. Then, without hesitation, he raised his rifle and fired. Seconds later, a Japanese sniper fell from a camouflage perch so well hidden that none of the others had spotted it even after the body hit the ground. Moments like this cemented his reputation as the platoon's silent guardian. To the men around him, it felt like he had a sixth sense. His rifle, a mail-order purchase many had once ridiculed, proved vital to his success. The weapon was lighter and more accurate than the standard-issue rifles. Its trigger pull was smooth, its scope familiar, and every part of it responded exactly how he expected. While other soldiers needed time to adjust to their military-issued weapons, he could fire his rifle with instinctive precision. Every shot he took came from years of handling the weapon, practicing with it, and trusting it. He didn't have to fight the rifle. The rifle worked with him. The respect he earned wasn't just because he killed enemy snipers. It was because he saved American lives. Each Japanese sniper he eliminated was one less deadly threat stalking the jungle trails, one less hidden rifle aimed at his comrades. Soldiers began to sleep easier, knowing he was nearby. When night fell and the sounds of the jungle echoed around their foxholes, they felt protected simply because he was part of their unit. But the pressure on him grew heavier with every successful mission. For each sniper he took down, another one seemed to take their place. The Japanese were becoming increasingly aware that someone was hunting their best marksman. They began adapting, using deeper camouflage, changing positions frequently, and firing decoy shots to lure him into traps. The battlefield was turning into a dangerous game of cat and mouse, where each side knew the other's strengths and weaknesses. Yet he remained calm, confident, and focused. He didn't chase snipers recklessly. He studied them, waited for them to make a mistake, and then struck with perfect precision. His fellow soldiers admired him for another reason. He never bragged, never celebrated a kill, and never acted like a hero. To him, every shot was simply another step toward keeping his unit alive. He treated his role with seriousness and humility, knowing that one wrong move could cost the lives of the men beside him. Even though he had already eliminated more enemy snipers in a matter of days than most snipers took out in an entire campaign, he never allowed pride to cloud his judgment. By the end of the second week on the island, his reputation had spread far beyond his platoon. Officers from neighboring units heard about the quiet soldier with the mail-order rifle who could spot snipers before anyone else. Some wanted to borrow him for dangerous missions, but his commanding officer refused. "He stays with us," he would say. "He saved too many of my boys." There was a growing sense across the regiment that he wasn't just a skilled marksman. He was an irreplaceable asset, someone whose presence alone changed the way soldiers moved through the jungle. Even as the battles grew bloodier, he remained steady. The jungle was unforgiving, the heat relentless, and the enemy cunning, but he adapted faster than anyone else. While others felt fear creeping into their minds, he felt clarity. Hunting snipers wasn't just a duty for him. It had become his war, his battlefield, and his responsibility. And with each silent victory, his legend grew stronger. As the fighting on the island grew more intense, the American patrols started to realize that Charlie's strange little rifle wasn't just a lucky charm. It was becoming their most reliable counter-sniper weapon. Every day, Japanese marksmen dug deeper into caves, palm trees, and shattered buildings, waiting motionlessly for the perfect moment to pick off and expose American snipers from the Imperial Japanese Army were patient, disciplined, and brutally accurate, and their presence slowed entire units to a crawl. Men would hesitate before crossing open ground. Scouting missions took twice as long, and even simple supply trips became life-or-death gambles. But Charlie, with his mail-order rifle, simply refused to be intimidated. He began waking up earlier than the rest of the platoon, studying the terrain, scanning the tree lines, and memorizing every possible hideout the enemy could use. While others talked or tried to get a quick meal, Charlie sat quietly, cleaning his rifle, adjusting the scope exactly the way he liked it, and preparing himself for another day of deadly cat and mouse. What made him so dangerous wasn't just that he could shoot, it was that he understood how snipers thought. He knew how they breathed, how they moved, what they watched for, and most importantly, what mistakes they made when they believed they were invisible. The more the Japanese tried to target his unit, the more determined he became to track them down first. His squad mates eventually realized he wasn't wandering off randomly. He was hunting, slowly, methodically, the same way the enemy hunted them. Charlie's confidence grew after each success, but he never became reckless. Instead, he stayed focused, calculating every movement. He taught himself to observe small disturbances that others ignored. A piece of bark chipped off a tree, a faint reflection from a rifle scope, a patch of grass pressed down, or the unnatural stillness of a shadow that should have been swaying with the wind. And when he spotted a clue, he acted with lightning speed. He would drop into a firing position, inhale deeply, let half the breath out, and squeeze the trigger with a calmness that amazed even the combat veterans around him. His rifle barked once, never twice, and every time he fired, the men around him listened for the telltale silence that followed. If no countershot came, if no muzzle flash appeared, they knew he'd gotten another one. Word began spreading across the unit that the quiet kid with the strange rifle had turned into a one-man anti-sniper squad. Officers who had laughed at him now sent him with patrols that needed protection. Men who once rolled their eyes at his toy rifle now waited eagerly for him to take point because they felt safer when he was around. Nobody admitted it openly, but everyone recognized that he was keeping them alive. The Japanese snipers started to take notice too. Reports filtered through intercepted communications that an unusually effective American rifleman was disrupting their tactics, forcing them to shoot less and relocate more often. Some even tried to bait him by intentionally revealing positions and then shifting to secondary hideouts, hoping he would expose himself. But Charlie didn't fall for it. He'd watch quietly, sometimes for an hour before taking a shot. His patience outmatched theirs, and when they shifted positions, he noted the movement and ended them anyway. One afternoon, during a routine push through a jungle ravine, his squad came under fire from a Japanese sniper concealed high in a banyan tree. The enemy sharpshooter had the perfect angle, suppressing the entire American line and pinning them behind rocks. The officer in charge started shouting for someone, anyone, to provide covering fire. Men were panicking, ducking, and waiting for the next bullet. Charlie didn't shout or rush. He simply crawled forward on his stomach, inch by inch, using roots and fallen branches as cover, while the sniper kept firing at the trapped Americans. After several tense minutes, Charlie reached a small mound of dirt, steadied his rifle, and carefully scanned the branches. Most men would have looked for movement. Charlie instead searched for the one thing snipers never hid: their line of sight. He waited, watching for the exact moment the Japanese marksman aimed again. When a tiny flicker of sunlight reflected off the enemy's scope, Charlie fired instantly. The shot echoed through the ravine, and then silence. His entire squad stared in disbelief as the Japanese rifle tumbled from the tree and the threat vanished. Moments like that transformed Charlie from a ridiculed newcomer into a legend within his battalion. Soldiers began asking him for lessons, wanting to know how he spotted snipers so fast. He explained his technique in the simplest terms. Don't look for the man, look for what doesn't belong. The advice sounded obvious, even boring, but when the men tried to imitate him, they realized it took incredible discipline and focus. Qualities Charlie had been practicing long before the war. His mail-order rifle, once mocked by everyone, had now become part of his identity. Other soldiers swore that he could sense snipers before they even fired their first shot. Stories about him spread from unit to unit, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes completely true, but always fueled by gratitude from soldiers who survived because he was there. Even the officers began treating him with more respect, assigning him to missions where his talent could turn the tide. The nickname, the guy with the mail-order rifle, transformed from an insult into a badge of honor. As the days went on and his count of enemy snipers grew, Charlie remained humble. He wasn't interested in bragging or medals. He cared only about keeping his friends safe. The men he fought beside weren't just soldiers. They were the people he slept next to in muddy foxholes, marched with across baking terrain, and listened to during the rare quiet moments. Their survival mattered more to him than any number or statistic. Each time he eliminated another Japanese sniper, he didn't celebrate. He simply nodded, reloaded, and prepared for the next threat. Still, everyone else kept track, whispering about how many lives he had saved. His ability to calmly face danger encouraged others to push forward with more confidence, allowing the unit to move faster and secure territory that had previously been too risky to cross. By the time he eliminated his 11th sniper in just 4 days, even the officers were calling him one of the most valuable assets in the entire campaign. By the time the fighting finally began to slow, Charlie had become something far greater than a lucky marksman with a strange rifle. He had become the quiet protector of his entire unit, the man who turned the tide every time the Japanese tried to strike from the shadows. But even after eliminating 11 snipers in just 4 days, he never acted like a hero. He walked, talked, and lived like an ordinary soldier, although everyone around him now treated him with a respect he had never experienced before. His commander started assigning him to the most dangerous routes, not because they wanted to risk him, but because they knew he was the only one who could guide an entire squad safely through Japanese sniper territory. Charlie accepted these missions without complaint. He understood that every enemy sharpshooter he eliminated meant one less threat, one less chance that his friends would die crossing a ridge, carrying supplies, or simply trying to rest. And so, even as exhaustion set in, he wiped the sweat from his face, cleaned his rifle with steady hands, and prepared for every new dawn with the same quiet determination that had defined him since the day he arrived. The last major incident that cemented his legend happened during a brutal push through a jungle valley. The Americans desperately needed to secure intelligence warned that the area was crawling with Japanese marksmen, some of the most experienced snipers left in that sector. Several units had already taken heavy casualties trying to advance through the thick trees and steep slopes, and morale was beginning to dip as fears grew that the valley was simply too dangerous to cross. But when Charlie stepped forward, carrying the same mail-order rifle everyone had once mocked, whispers spread through the ranks like sparks. "If he's going," one soldier muttered, "we might actually make it." And so Charlie led the way as the unit began creeping into the valley, each man stepping exactly where Charlie stepped, following his pace, trusting his instincts more than the maps or orders they had been given. The Japanese snipers in that valley were patient, deadly, and well hidden, but they had no idea they were facing someone who had already mastered the very game they were trying to play. Charlie scanned every ridge, every broken branch, every oddly shaped shadow in the canopy. A few times he stopped suddenly, raising his hand to freeze the entire line. Without a word, he would drop to one knee, raise his rifle, and fire a single shot. Every time, the crack of his rifle was followed by a heavy thud in the bushes or a rifle falling from a tree. His squad moved forward slowly, cautiously, but with growing confidence, because every time he pulled the trigger, another invisible threat disappeared from the world. At one point, a Japanese sniper tried a clever trick by placing a helmet on a stick to bait Charlie into revealing himself. Most soldiers, even trained ones, might have taken the shot, but Charlie didn't fire. Instead, he studied the brush around the decoy, searching for the faintest sign of movement. When the sniper shifted slightly behind a fallen log, Charlie fired. Not at the helmet, but at the log. Moments later, his squad heard the unmistakable cry of pain, followed by silence. The men stared at Charlie with a mixture of awe and disbelief. He had just beaten a tactic specifically designed to kill expert marksmen. Hours later, as the squad neared the far edge of the valley, the most dangerous sniper of all finally revealed himself, an elite Japanese sharpshooter who had already killed multiple American soldiers earlier that week. This sniper had chosen a nearly perfect hiding place, high on a cliff, partially shielded by rocks and vegetation, with a commanding view of the valley below. As soon as the unit stepped into his line of fire, he opened up, forcing them to dive behind boulders and fallen logs. Dust and splinters burst into the air with each shot. Now everyone was pinned down except Charlie, who stayed calm even as bullets snapped through the leaves above his head. He carefully crawled to a small ridge, trying to angle himself upward for a better view. Most men would have panicked. Even trained snipers would have hesitated. But Charlie understood this was no ordinary enemy. This was someone who could pin down an entire platoon alone. And so Charlie pressed his cheek to the stock of his rifle, slowed his breathing, and let everything around him fade into silence. For nearly a full minute, he didn't move. He studied the cliff, the gaps in the rocks, the suspicious shadows. The Japanese sniper shifted slightly to get a better angle on the Americans pinned below, and that tiny movement was all Charlie needed. He fired a single round, and the echo rolled across the valley like thunder. The sniper didn't fire again. Slowly, the pinned soldiers began lifting their heads. A few seconds passed. Then one of them whispered, "He got him." The tension that had gripped the valley for hours finally broke, and the unit surged forward with renewed energy. They completed the mission without losing another man. By the time the campaign ended, Charlie had become a symbol of survival, courage, and quiet mastery. His mail-order rifle was no longer a joke. It was a piece of battlefield history. Soldiers from other units approached him just to shake his hand or thank him for saving their friends. Officers sent messages up the chain recommending him for commendations. And though Charlie never asked for recognition, the truth was undeniable. He had changed the course of the entire operation. In just a few days, he eliminated threats that could have taken dozens of American lives. He restored confidence to a shaken unit, and he proved that skill, patience, and determination could turn even the most unlikely soldier into a hero. But the most remarkable part was that Charlie himself never changed. He didn't brag about his kills. He didn't talk about being a hero. He didn't even care that the rifle everyone mocked was now famous. He simply cleaned his weapon, helped his squad pack their gear, and prepared to move on to the next mission. To him, that was what soldiers did. They protected each other, no matter the ground, and in the vast, brutal chaos of World War II, that quiet sense of duty was what made him truly extraordinary.